I always say we should avoid what I like to call show up and throw up. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes we make as sellers is showing up with our own agenda to tell a customer all about the 1,000 products that we have that we want to sell them immediately to try to make our number for the quarter. And it's a huge mistake.
Welcome to our latest episode of the B2B Sales Trends podcast, my lovely people. The show that brings you hacks, tips, thought leadership to the topic of B2B selling. My name is Harry Kendlbacher, and today's episode is about the best salespeople never sell anything. And for that session, we have an expert, which I'm particularly pleased to have on the show today, is Beth Morris. Beth is the VP of Product Insights at NielsenIQ. Welcome to the B2B Sales Trends podcast, Beth.
Thanks, Harry. So happy to be here.
To kick this off, share a little bit about your role as VP of Product Insight at NielsenIQ and what your day-to-day looks like leading your team, Beth, if you would.
Yeah. So Product Insights here at NielsenIQ basically takes any label, claim, ingredient, anything that's on the front, back side of any packaging of any CPG product and takes a look at all the sales data and metrics behind those. So we help a wide variety of industries, whether manufacturers, retailers, just really understand more about how their products are performing in the marketplace.
Very interesting. Very interesting. How long have you been at NielsenIQ?
I've been NielsenIQ about 3.5 years.
Wow, real pro then, real pro. Fabulous. Beth, you've lent us the title of this episode in our pre-call, actually, and that was this sort of thought that the best salespeople never sell anything. So, a lot of people think of sales as pushing a product, but the most effective sellers take a very different approach. So how do you think about that difference?
Yeah, we did get the opportunity to chat about that in the pre-call. It's fun. And so I use that term a lot, or I guess that phrase a lot, with people who are concerned about going into sales. And they say, sales is so intimidating. I could never be a salesperson. And, I like to tell them, the best people or the best sellers never sell anything. And so, of course, that lens, what do you mean by that? And definitely, in order to be a good seller, all you have to do is be a really good problem solver. And so if you can really get to the heart of a problem with a client and show them that you have a solution to the problem, you really haven't sold them anything. You did exchange money, you did exchange a contract, but at the end of the day, you've really just helped them solve a problem that they had already.
And that's interesting because I'm sort of, thinking a step further, what you said, if you can really understand the problem, discovery is a key thing that one has to do well. And you mentioned discovery is a real differentiator in the way that discovery is done. Why do you see discovery as such a critical skill? And how do you make sure that your teams are truly uncovering what matters most to your customers and prospects?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always say we should avoid what I like to call show up and throw up. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes we make as sellers is showing up with our own agenda to tell a customer all about the 1,000 products that we have that we want to sell them immediately to try to make our number for the quarter. And it's a huge mistake. So the better job you can do in discovery really helps you avoid putting a square peg into a round hole. And sometimes that product and solution just isn't the right answer to what they are trying to come up with, what they're trying to solve for. And so the more questions you can ask to help not waste anyone's time, everybody's exceptionally busy. And so the more questions you can ask to help get to the heart of the problem, it's gonna make you much more efficient at trying to solve it.
So the idea of discovery is not good enough to just ask 20 questions, right? And sort of ask the same old rubbish questions everybody else is asking. That really doesn't differentiate you. So you're saying come with a sort of a clean slate with a clear mind to really understand what their issues are and how you can help them solve it.
Yes, please never ask me what keeps you up at night.
Right, right. You'd be surprised, I tell you, many people still say that.
I know, I
It
know.
is crazy. It is crazy. Do you? So a lot of the work that we do, it's where we say, okay, discovery. The right discovery, you just have to be different, and you couple that with all these stats that are out there that the buyers are more educated these days. X% of the buying decision has been made before they engage a seller, and all these things. I really believe that a good discovery is not just about finding out stuff. I believe it's about generating new stuff in their mind, generating new needs that they haven't thought of before, generating new needs that they may not have considered or under or not appreciated that they can impact their business. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think
Right.
being able to have my sellers come to any conversation with something that company or that individual did not know is crucially important to the conversation. So do your homework. What about their industry might they not know? What kind of trends are happening in the market that they may be unaware of? If you can bring them something that they haven't thought about before, then it really establishes you as a thought leader and an expert in their topic, which is always going to open up additional conversations and pathways that you might not have thought about previously.
Right. And sometimes when we do our stuff, we always think about, okay, it's one thing to start preparing for a meeting, say, okay, what questions shall I ask during my discovery phase, right? That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, which need do I want to generate in the mind of the buyer? So be clear about that need first, and then formulate your questions to get there.
Yep.
How do you, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially in our industry, it's really interesting to go and pull data for that company before you ever get on the phone. So what do their stats look like? What is their best performing product? What is doing really terribly in the market? What kind of trends are we seeing that they may not even be aware of? Or what kind of insights do we have on their competitors and what they're doing that they may not be aware of? So again, anytime we can come and make them more aware of something that they didn't know before really helps us craft the conversation in a way that will not only give them intelligence that maybe they didn't have before, but really opens up sales opportunities for things that they didn't know that they needed yet when they got on the call.
Yeah. And how do you scale this? I mean, that's all great theory, what we're chatting about, right? And I know you and you and myself, we can do that great. But how do you scale this amongst the sales team and sort of get them out of their comfort zone, because they will be falling back into their comfort zone. They will be doing what they are sort of know best. How do you scale that sort of behavior to your teams?
Yeah, I think, and obviously we deal in the quantity business too, but you want to deal in the quality business, right? So don't spend your time on things that are not going to get you anywhere, not going to get the customer anywhere. It's not going to get you anywhere. So you really have to, I think, take a look and find those specifically good opportunities that you know you can go and help quickly. And I think those really are pretty good at revealing themselves to you as a general rule. You know what's going to be a really strong lead when you walk into it. But of course, sometimes things you don't think are going to work out great end up being some of your best ones too. So again, it's where the discovery phase, I would say, is super crucial. But yeah, you have to be willing to do your homework. It saves so much time on both sides.
Yeah, and that's interesting, knowing that, really knowing when to walk away, right? And part of the discovery is really realizing when there isn't an opportunity to, right? It's how do
Yeah.
you qualify in, but also equally important, how do you qualify out, right? How do you coach your salespeople to disqualify opportunities and feel comfortable walking away? Because salespeople hate that kind of stuff.
They hate it. Absolutely hate it. And, there's nothing worse. I think they think there's nothing worse than coming to me and be like, hey, Beth, this one's just not going to work out. I was on a call today. It didn't go well. And they said no. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. And they go, what do you mean that's great? I said, no, the faster you get a no, the faster
Right.
you can go and get another yes. So you have to get those no's quickly if they're going to happen so that you can move on.
Right. Exactly. So having that clear qualification method, and then to make sure that every opportunity is qualified according to that. Do I have all the key stakeholders? Is there a problem I can solve? Is the problem big enough in the mind of the prospect or buyer that they are going to put funds and timelines and change behind that? All these elements. And I say sometimes salespeople live in this sort of the land of hope. I hope this comes through, and I hope that comes through. And sometimes that sort of clarity, and really to be on point by saying, is this really a reality or is this wishful thinking? It really helps them, don't you think?
Yeah, no, and I would say, as we're recording this, we have about 8 days left in the quarter. So this is like the ultimate land of hope with a salesperson right now. And yes, I really think I can close this deal by the end of the quarter. And, sometimes you have to, again, it's the ultimate decision time, whether you're going to make something happen or walk away from it, really happens at this stage in the quarter.
Yeah. And of course now, so we've chatted about discovery and of course that discovery element of our sales cycle really needs to be also applied to different stakeholders. And we know that, more stakeholders are involved than ever nowadays. And our experience says that salespeople are sort of more comfortable with certain types of stakeholders. So they're more drawn to those kind of personas. How do you prepare your teams to tailor those conversations to those different personas? From a procurement person to a compliance to a category manager or any of these stakeholders involved. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things that sellers can do right now is really move from topic selling to persona selling. And that's something that we really focus on at NielsenIQ is just making sure you're delivering the right message to the right person. And again, part of that is doing your homework. By all means, please know who is going to be on that call before you get on the call, right? And you can't always know, but at least do that client the courtesy of going through the attendee list. Look up those individuals on LinkedIn. What do they do? Like, make sure you're going into that call completely prepared for a message that's going to resonate with each one of those individuals. We're all exceptionally busy and nobody wants to have their time wasted on either side. So just make sure that you've really taken the time to dig into that opportunity a little bit deeper so that you're going to have a message again that resonates with those individuals.
You're right, absolutely. Another element that you've brought up in the pre-call was the idea of you got to negotiate these days really well. We're all dealing with savvy, well-trained buyers. People who follow us know that we also train buyers and procurement people how they engage and negotiate with sellers. So we sort of get both sides of the equation. When you shared, some of your negotiation principles, you were talking about negotiating without concessions. And when sales cycles move into that phase, usually it's perceived to be the later stage of things. How can sellers really hold their ground on value and avoid slipping into these, concessions, into these giveaways, into that concession mode? How do they do that? What would your advice to salespeople?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest skills that sellers learn sometimes because I think we have an innate need to keep everybody happy and you want everybody to be happy. You want to get to your number and you think, well, some sale is better than no sale, right? Some money is better than no money. But at the end of the day, if you've gone in and devalued your product with that customer, you're never going to be able to get the full value of it any point in the future. So you have to really hold your ground and show value from the very beginning. And, one of the ways we do that is just a quick return on investment. If you haven't been able to show that client an ROI, it's going to make it much tougher. But when you can go into the client and say, if you spend $100,000 on this solution, your problem's now turned into $1 million opportunity. And so you have to be able to show that there's a really strong return on investment to that buyer. But yeah, it's extremely hard. And I think sometimes we think even on renewals, a flat renewal was a win. That's not a win because our solutions have gotten exceptionally more expensive. Our staffing's gotten more expensive. So really you've devalued the product by taking something that was flat.
Right. That's interesting. So you recommend, instead of going into concession mode, to go back to an ROI and really cement that ROI, messaging in your conversations. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, and again, when you've solved the problem, then the need by the client to have that solution should be so strong that they realize that they can't live without it, right? They have
Right.
to. So if you've done a really good job in your problem solving methodology, it's going to make your life much easier.
It is interesting. We've done a research, and one of a research piece on what helps people to increase their win rates, or why are win rates basically declining. And it's interesting. There's one element in that research that talks about you cannot discount your way to a close.
Yeah.
And that's not really a strategy. You'd be amazed that a lot of companies still do that. They discount their way to a close, and it's really not. It's really not a strategy. It's really a symptom
Yeah,
of.
I'm not surprised actually to hear you say that because we come against it every day, right? Well, XYZ company is willing to give me XYZ price on this. And sometimes we have to say, it doesn't make sense for us to give you that. Obviously you have to be careful about what you say, but
Yeah.
what we also find though is a year later, those companies are coming back to us to say, we got what we paid for. And so now we'd like to come back and pay a little more because this solution makes so much more sense for us than, the one that we had in place.
Yeah. And it's interesting, especially for salespeople, that sort of point where you think, okay, is I have to give up something to progress? Because the question begs, right? Why do salespeople even think about conceding? Right? Is it maybe that they're not convinced of their own value that they can provide? Maybe that's a question. But also sometimes it is sort of a way of saying, I want to progress this. And by me giving something, maybe it speeds things up, right? And that could be a reason for it. It's for me, this is always really interesting, is especially with what do you give? It's what do you give? How do you give it? When do you give it? What signal do you send out by giving it? And let's eliminate this idea of giving, and let's implement this thinking of value exchange, right?
Yeah.
And so you sort of educating the client along. I fully agree with you that the ROI conversation is really key, though, to tackle these sort of demands. And remember, buyers, they always lead on price. That's one way to commoditize you, right?
Yep. For sure.
Right. How do you think about, so there's the ROI conversation, and there is the COI conversation, the cost of inaction conversation, right? So the ROI conversation is, here is what you're going to get in X amount of months, right? If you use our tool, our data, our product. Okay, great. That is a predictable return that I'm going to get by working with you. The cost of inaction conversation is the conversation that is the idea of, every month you're not doing this and not doing this right, it's going to cost you X.
Yep.
How do you feel about these kind of conversations?
In a previous role, we sold compliance solutions. And so compliance is an area because the ROI isn't always there, right? The ROI isn't always there up front to say, you're going to make this much money by using our compliance tools.
Right.
However, it's a perfect example for a COI when you say, hey, just so you know, all of these fines have been leveraged against businesses that are in your industry in the last 12 months. So just because they haven't hit you yet doesn't mean that they won't. And we always had to say, the reputational risk that you have is probably the biggest item that you can potentially get hit with, because that is exceptionally hard to make back. And so
Right.
anytime that you can, go up against I would say reputational risk is exceptionally hard.
Yeah, that is tough, because it's also very difficult to quantify financially, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
that's interesting. We through our work, we understand that cost of inaction conversations for salespeople are really challenging to have, just because they're really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is that Is that what you see as well?
I don't really see that as much, quite honestly. And so I think it's great to be able to say, like, some of our tools will say, this is the next market you could go into. And so that is a great COI conversation, I would say, that if you're not spending tools in this market, you're costing yourself this much. It actually is really an exciting conversation as a general rule, because we can show them something they didn't know before, to say, this is a huge area of opportunity for you that you may not have even been aware of. So it's actually kind of enjoyable on our side.
Right. Beth, we're almost at the end of our time together. The last question on every podcast I ask is always the same. And we've actually recently just pulled data amongst all these episodes that we have now recorded. It's very interesting what people's opinion are on that question, which is, what are, in your opinion, the top 3 qualities of elite salespeople? In other words, what are the top 3 skills and behaviors that you believe elite salespeople nowadays need to use and do and execute to be elite? What would those top 3 be?
That's a great question. And I'm trying to I know my top 1, so I'm trying to figure out if I'll count down to it or start with it. I will leave it for the end. But I think excellent communication skills has to be huge, whether it's internal or your internal customers. Sometimes they're equally as important to your external customers. So I think that that's really crucial to remember. Making exceptionally prescriptive solutions to your clients to make sure that you've really addressed what they need. That'll speed up your sales cycle. But I would say the number 1 skill that I always look for if I'm hiring a new seller is an excellent multitasker. We have to be able to keep so many juggling balls going in the air at the same time. And one of the things we really focus on our team is hitting what I call hitting the ball back over the net. So if the ball's on your side of the court, the client can't do anything with it. So whether it's pricing, contracting, a response, whatever the case may be, you have to get that ball back on the other side of the net as quickly as you can in order to speed up your sales cycle and make things happen. So multitasking is really crucial, and staying organized for any seller, I would say.
So if I understand that correctly, it's excellent communication skills, making exceptional recommendations to clients, as well as multitasking are your top 3 qualities for elite salespeople.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Beth, you've been a marvelous guest. Thank you very much. I know our listeners very much appreciate your insights and thought leadership on this topic. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. It was great to chat with you.
Fabulous. 2 calls to action, my lovely people. Go to the b2bsalestrends.com site, subscribe and share this episode or other episodes with people who you think this could be applicable to, and I'm sure will benefit from this great learning. Go to globalperformancegroup.com if you want to find out how to increase your win rates. And until the next episode, my lovely people, look after yourself, look after your customers, and of course, your loved ones. Thank you. Bye-bye.